episode number 4. My name is Leontine, I'm from the Netherlands, and this is my little happy place where I talk about navy life, knitting, and all my other creative endeavors. So it's been a while since I recorded my last movie, and I just postponed because I definitely wanted to see the life of It's a Sarah. But here we are now, and I hope my husband doesn't come down for his lunch because he's working from home. Kids are at school. We survived the storm yesterday. And so I'm all set to tell you all about my yarny travels from last year. But before we get started, let me tell you what I'm wearing. This is my Feilx cardigan by Amy Christoffer, I think. And I made this last year with the Feilx in February knit along by It's a Sarah. And I made it in, I'm thinking the Plötulopi. It's the unspun Icelandic yarn by Istex. And one thread of, I think, Drops Kid Silk in black. And I took it out today out of its hibernation spot, and it's still a little wrinkly from my like vacuum bag where I put it in and vacuum all the air out. And it does feel a little scratchy, but it gets better once you wear it again, and it's really warm and cozy, and I really, really like it. So where to start? Yeah, finished objects. I actually finished 2 objects since last episode, which is quite a lot for me. First one is this cutie. It's a beret, the Sterenn Beret by avec Anna. I'm looking absolutely ridiculous probably, but well, I usually don't wear my beret like this. You're supposed to wear it like this. I made this in one thread of Holst Supersoft in Carmine red, and one thread of Filcolana Tilia in a bright red color. And I don't know if you can see it, but it has this nice star motif on top. And on the inside, because I thought it was a bit loose, I put some elastic thread in the binding. And this is for my dear mother-in-law who wanted a red beret and couldn't find one. So I hope, she hasn't seen it yet, I hope I can surprise her with this tomorrow. And my other finished object is actually in school. It's a project I started a long time ago with this yarn from actually this can shop, VYEN in the Netherlands. And this is 80% acrylic and 20% wool. And I made a little vest for my daughter. It is the Oversized gilet by Woodstool Wool. It's a Dutch designer, and it's made in this little chunkier yarn. Actually, it's designed for needles size 8. I had needle size 7, and it fits perfectly on my girl. And I will put some footage of her this morning because she did not want to take it off anymore and is now wearing it in school. And it was a very, very fast knit. I think it took me less than a week. I must admit I had quite some knitting time this time, but on needle size 7 it went quite fast. So this is for all the admin. And yeah, I got quite some questions about the Navylife. And I have been on a frigate as head of Department of Logistics for 2.5 years. And during the time on the ship, we did quite some traveling. And that's where my love for yarny souvenirs actually started. So I want to take you back to January 2021, when I started as head of Department of Logistics of HNLMS Tromp. The ship had been in maintenance, and it's a major overhaul. Imagine you have a house and you strip it of literally everything but the outside walls and the roof, and then you put it all back together. Well, that's more or less what they did with the ship. So it got a major, major overhauling. All the crew is taken off, and then the crew is put back together in a new compilation. And then you have to train how to work your ship again.
This is the wardroom or the recreational space of the officers. We have coffee here or watch movies. We eat separately on this type of ship. This is where the officers have their breakfast, lunch and dinner, or play a game from time to time. As a senior officer, I have my private cabin. This is my working space and my living space. So it's almost 2 by 2, and yeah, this is all your world. At night it doubles as your sleeping cabin. You fold open the couch. The toilet is in the hallway, but with 2-person huts in between there's a shower. So I only share this with one other person. It has a little perk.
We did this from January, and actually in October of 2021 we had our very first trip with the ship. We had some extensive training beforehand. Imagine you're getting the keys to a brand new car. Well, it's helpful if you take some driving lessons beforehand, and actually that's what we did with the little crew we had at the time. We weren't fully crewed yet. So you do some basic training. You have to be able to sleep on your ship. So you have to have clean water. You have to be able to cook. Your fire alarms and everything have to work in order for you to be safe, like staying in a hotel. And so if that is covered, you're allowed to actually live on the ship again besides of working. And it's helpful that the loos work, for example. And then you do some training, basic firefighting, because like in a village, you actually do everything a village has, you do on your own. Firefighting, you have a bakery, you have a sick bay with a medic in there. You make your own power, you're your own power plant, you make your own water, and you move. So you need people who know how to sail the ship. So that's really the basic. And you start training that, you do drills, you make sure if somebody gets injured what to do, because you're your own hospital also. You're your own ambulance, you're your own, what I said, firefighter, you're your own carpenter. So you imagine a situation where you would sail on a rock or something and you have flooding. You have to repair it yourself. You can't just dial 911 and hope that somebody comes and rescues you. So all of those things you have to train. We were a crew of about 90 by the time, so absolutely not fully crewed yet. But with the 90, we had to train these basic survival skills that we would be able to go to sea in a safe way. And at the end of this first slice of training, we went to Hamburg, our very first port visit. It was end of October, and we were really looking forward to it, going to another place and seeing a port. It was lovely weather in Hamburg. We had the nicest time, and it was also one of the first port visits that we were able to do as a Navy after COVID. There were still COVID restrictions. You would still have to wear masks, but it was wonderful to be able to travel again. Especially with the ship, and the crew had a blast. So we stayed there for, I think, 3 days. We arrived on Friday and we sailed back to the Netherlands on Monday. And I was already knitting by then, but I did not visit a yarn store. That's, I think, one of the only harbor visits where I did not go and find a yarn store. I know that there is Mylis, but yeah, by the time I couldn't find the time. I had a meeting with a friend I had met literally 30 years before, and we hadn't seen each other in 30 years. And we had a meetup, we had some coffee, and it was generally a really nice time. But that's actually the only port where I didn't buy yarn. Then we move on to December 2021. So we went back to the Netherlands. We continued our training. We hired some more crew, or at least we took on some more crew, so military. And so the crew was growing, and we were preparing for the Christmas holiday, so when the ship is shut down. And then we got the call that we had, it's 3 days before our Christmas holiday started. The ship was due to close down on Friday, and on Tuesday we got a call that we had to muster 50 people to help in the booster campaign for COVID. That's also something the military is called for civilian military cooperation. And so we had to muster 50 of a crew of about 100. So half of us were the lucky ones who got to spend their entire Christmas holiday in the COVID vaccination center, in one of the centers. I had never had a syringe in my hand before, and I was the lucky one, who got to organize it all for our 50 people of the ship. So I was, let's say, head of the delegation. We planned for buses. We drove to Hilversum. It's about an hour drive from our Navy base. There's the medical training facilities, and we had to train how to administer vaccinations. And it sounds quite scary in the beginning, especially when you have a junior sailor with trembling hands putting a syringe in your boss's arm. That was quite funny, but he did very well. And then we got our placement, and we had to work at the vaccination center, which was a 3-hour drive away from Den Helder. It's close to the Netherlands-German border, close to Arnhem. And fortunately, we were crews of 3 different ships who had to work there. And so we could make a rota that we would work for 2 days, then drive home for 1.5 days off, and then start again, work 2 shifts, and then go back. And it was all dispersed over the entire period of Christmas and New Year's, and into the new year. We were not that happy when we got the call to help for the booster campaign, but we were kind of flabbergasted by the people we met there. The first day, they did it with year of birth. So the first days we worked there, it was mostly elderly. And the gratitude from the people was overwhelming. Some even brought Christmas cookies, and some were even just glad they could talk to us for 5 minutes and tell their story. And we get a lot of very heartwarming stories. We got a lot of sad stories, people grieving, missing their loved ones, especially around the holidays. But it was really, really heartwarming, and really gave us the idea that we were contributing to something good, or the good cause. So that really brought us into the Christmas spirit. And yeah, when we drove home just before Christmas, all of us had driving home for Christmas from Chris Rea on the car radio, and sounding out of the car and driving like mad people home. But it was an experience that I wouldn't want to miss. Unfortunately for me, that was in the Christmas holiday, but I got to spend Christmas with my loved ones. And I must say, not worrying about Christmas dinner and just arriving, parking the car, taking a shower, putting my fancy Christmas dress on, and just sitting at the table while the rest of the family organized the entire thing was also quite relaxing. But yeah, then we came to January 2022. I finished one of my first bigger knits. It was a Hufflepuff scarf for my dear, dear sister-in-law, who is a Hufflepuff all through, and I knitted in the round, and I knitted with acrylic yarn. I wouldn't do that anymore now. But yeah, there was quite some hours of knitting that went into it, and I hope she still wears it, Mindy. Well, then I also, in the time we had off, I made some double tuffler. I'll put in a photo. I made it in Sandnesgarn Fritids yarn, and it's a feltable fabric. So you knit, basically it looks like double socks, and then you felt it and you put one side into the other, and you have like this beautiful bright red felted slippers. And they were also for my mother-in-law. So I guess she really loves red. It was kind of the same color as this. And I was a bit worried because she has a very slippery floor in her apartment. So I bought some liquid latex, and I put a latex sole on the slipper, so it's now anti-slip and it works really, really well. And I think I bought a liter bottle for about €8 on Amazon. So if you're ever considering making house socks or slippers, put some latex on, works like a charm. And then what else did we do in January? Yes, I resumed my training as a flight deck officer. So besides having your primary job on the ship, you also have numerous other tasks. And since my deputy got COVID just the night before the training started, we had to shift everything in the morning. So I had to do the flight deck officer training. And it actually means that you do a training that enables you to land and take off helicopters from your helicopter. It's a lot of procedures, it's safety procedures, and you're basically, well, if you ever travel by plane and you see people with those bats standing there and waving and doing stuff, well, that's kind of what I did with helicopters. I did it 15 years ago when I had my first sailing position on a ship, when I was the deputy head of logistics. And the only thing that has changed is that the helicopter is massively bigger in the meantime. Now we fly with NH90 helicopters in the Netherlands Navy, and they're huge. But luckily, a lot of the procedures were still the same. But I had to retrain to get my license back, actually, to be able to land and take off helicopters. And it was a lot of fun. And I had to do my practical training. It's a 3-week course. And I had to do my practical training on board of my old ship, where I sailed as a junior. So that was really nice. I put in some footage where you see how the helicopter deck is moving and shifting. And that's actually our job as flight deck officer, to make sure that the ship is level once the helicopter comes and lands, because a helicopter crew cannot see when the ship is moving behind them. So you're basically the eyes of the helicopter. And it's really, really fun to do. You have to be maximum concentrated, so it's very tiring. After an hour of doing helicopter operations, I'm usually completely floored because you're constantly 100% focused and on and looking at everything. During the training, we were, I think, 4 trainees. So you take turns and you're sitting in the hangar watching the others because you learn from them. And I was making my 2nd pair of socks, which I did in a week. And I gifted them, I think, to my brother for his birthday. And I also, in January, started my Scarf of Doom, the Colding Shawl by Christoffer Knits, or Chris Berlin. It's a beautiful shawl. I made it in Brushed Alpaca, but it took me ages. I only finished it, I think, February this year. So it took me over a year to knit. But it has seen a lot of English ports where I took it with me, and you will see it on the photos in my London project bag. That's my England travel bag, and my shawl has literally been everywhere the ship has been. Yeah, London. That's where we went in February of 2022. We had our next increased level of training. That's a 2-week training where you learn your basic warfare. So not the sailing from A to B, but really how to fight with your Navy ship. That's basically what we are for. And you have a training staff on board, and it's crazy intensive. You make really, really long hours, and you have to put your lessons learned into action by the next day. So it's, wow, tiring, intensive, and you learn a lot. And so we were all looking forward to having a few days in London. We had to go to West India docks, and then you realize how small the docks there are and how big your ship actually is. But we were in the heart of London. Going up the Thames was quite the experience. We went there in a storm. And we actually had to stay in London a day longer because they closed down the Thames flood barrier. So we couldn't even leave. Yeah, it was quite interesting. I met the lovely Marianne there. She works at the Netherlands Embassy in London for the Defense Department. And we mailed back and forth for our port visit. And at some point she asked me, do you have any interesting plans in London this weekend? And I said, well, I must admit, I'm newly into knitting and I love knitting, so I want to explore some yarn stores. And then the fun began, because I got a mail back in huge letters saying, me too. Let me drag you to my favorite yarn store. Let's meet up, let's have coffee, and let's knit. And that's basically what we did. So she took me to Tribe Yarns. And it doesn't exist anymore, unfortunately. The owner moved to Scotland, I think. But it was a lovely, lovely store. Of course, I will put in some pictures, and I bought yarn. My idea was to buy local yarn to the country, have a local designer find a pattern and knit up that pattern. Well, did that go wrong? I couldn't decide what I wanted to get. So in the end, I got dye Gilpin Lowland DK. And my idea, I got it in three colors and a contrast color. And the idea was to make a sweater out of it. I saw a knit up pattern by West Yorkshire Spinners, but then I read on Ravelry that the pattern wasn't really thought through, that there were quite some, people weren't quite so positive about it. So I thought, well, let's not make that. I wanted to put in a fade of these colors and make the cuffs in contrasting color. And now I decided that I want to put these colors and make a caramel sweater by Petite Knit. It's not the same yarn thickness. So I tried my best to recalculate for DK yarn and see how it works out, because this is next up on my to knit list. And I bought the colors Allegan, it's a dark one. Let's see what the color is. Blue Enigma, Bell Rock, and I think Bell Heather, or just Heather. I'm going to find it. Oh, no, it's Bell Heather. And these will make up my caramel sweater. I hope I have enough. And this is really, really nice soft lamb's wool from Scotland. And then, because, well, once you're in London, there are more than one yarn store. So on the way back, I thought, well, let's go to Beautiful Knitters. I really, really love Beautiful Knitters too. And I got myself the tote bag, because you have to have it, right? Where is it? Then I got myself a lovely little project bag with a little bunny on there. I just love bunnies. And it's actually, I lived in Germany for a long while, and Germans are well known to give crazy nicknames. And I have this thing with my mother that she has this nickname for me, which is translated in bunny. So I had to get the bunny project bag. And then, what else did I get? The problem with me going to a yarn store without having a plan is you're overwhelmed by the yarns and you don't know what to get. You don't have a project in mind and you're just lost. Well, I look like a deer in the headlight, I guess, in the shop. But I decided to get 2 hanks of the wool barn. And I don't know the colors because I somehow misplaced the ball bands. I did not yet know that you can actually wind them up and put them in the center so you don't lose them. So I now have two beautiful skeins with no idea what to make with them. So maybe I will work these into a scarf, or don't know yet, maybe some socks, because I remember it's a sock yarn and I just love the colors. So that was London. Then we go into spring of last year. We continued our training, and as part of the training we also went to Portsmouth. And I will show you some footage. Being from the logistics department on the ship, we also had to host a formal dinner, because logistics is not only the material. You can compare it to being the own ship's Amazon.com. So for all kinds of material and products, that's my responsibility, or my team's. But it's also the galley personnel, the medical staff, the admin office. Those all belong to my team, and my galley team had to prepare a formal dinner for 8, I think. And because we only have limited space in the CO's cabin, I decided to well, give up my seat for somebody else and help my team to prepare the dinner. And we had an enormous amount of fun. We tasted everything. We ate quite a lot, I must say. It was delicious. But we had to carry up all the food 4 flights of stairs upwards because one of the lifts wasn't working. We had an enormous amount of fun behind the scenes, and I will show you some pictures of us having fun with the meal. In Portsmouth, I did not find a yarn store, but since I already had UK yarn from London, and because of our plans in April, I thought, well, let's skip one port visit. And also we didn't have that much time, I must say. Then, come April. In April, we started our fleet operational sea training. That's an intensive training of 6 weeks, which you do in Plymouth in the UK. And it's a program where about 60 to 70 staff come on your ship, train you extensively, give you feedback. It's an international group, and they train you up to the very highest standard there is. Once you're done at FOST, you're operationally ready for duty. And so we spent 6 lovely weekends also in Plymouth. Usually you train from Monday to Friday, and then you have the weekend off, and then you start again on Monday. And we were the lucky ones to be there in springtime. We had the loveliest weather. We did lots of hiking, lots of nature. And on one day I said, well, I'll take up the train to Exeter because I want to visit the shop of avec Anna. I don't know where I discovered her, probably Googling yarn store Exeter. I don't know, I can't remember. But so I took the train up. I had a lovely day for myself because the others didn't want to join. And I went there, and unfortunately, I'll show you pictures. That particular day, her shop was closed. But luckily for me, there's another lovely yarn shop in Exeter, which is called Wool on the X. And of course, I did get a project back there. I treated myself, since I was inconsolable that the shop was closed, with some lovely stitch markers with little sheep, which you cannot see. And there I really got some special yarn. This time I was prepared because I had some projects on my queue in Ravelry, and I wanted to make the water scarf by Marisa Noldeke by Maschenfein. It's a German designer, but she has a lot of designs also translated into English, and she has a huge online store. And since her original yarn wasn't on the market anymore, I decided to get alpaca from UK Alpaca, and I got these 2 blue tones. It's a super fine alpaca yarn in midnight blue and in, I can't see the color anymore, sky blue. And because this is DK and the other was not. I have the contrasting color of fingering, and we'll just hold these double, and this will make a beautiful stripy scarf in UK alpaca wool. And it says here, made in Britain from fleece of alpaca farmed in Britain. So it doesn't get more British than this. But they also had a gem, which I will show you here. This is one skein of orchard wool. And orchard wool is British yarn, and it's from a small flock of Jacob sheep and alpaca. And they live in an orchard in Devon. So this was really, really, really local. By the time I was in Exeter, I just started watching the Outlander series, and I was inspired to make some kind of an Outlanderish scarf shawl, something with this beautiful brown skein. Yeah, so that was 6 weeks of fleet operational sea training in and around Plymouth, and I will put in some b-roll and some pictures of our hikes and our teas and Sunday roast dinners, and just a lovely time we had. If you ever have the chance to visit Plymouth and the Barbican, do so. It's really, really lovely. And then we're already in June. In June we had a family day on the ship. It's a day where we're allowed to invite our parents or friends. Every crew member gets to invite 2 people, and you have a day of demonstrating how the ship works, how our weapons work, do some demos in and around the ship. We even had the new fighters, the F-35s, fly by in a real maverick way. We demonstrated our goalkeeper cannon, which I will put in, and we had a lovely day at sea. And the day I took my parents to come with me, and that was one of our last sailing days before we went on summer leave. For the summer leave period, we went to Bretagne with my family, and of course there was lots of knitting and enjoying food and enjoying the sunshine, and we generally loved the place, and we're definitely going back again this year. And shortly after summer break, I had to go to London to the Maritime Command of NATO, because we were about to deploy for a NATO deployment with our ship. After finishing the fleet operational sea training, we were ready for duty, and as such we were deployed to the Standing NATO Maritime Group 1 for 5.5 months in the end. And we were going to leave the second week of September, and we came back in the first week of January. And yeah, besides being the head of department of logistics of my ship, I also had a dual duty to also be the staff officer logistics in the staff of Standing NATO Maritime Group 1, which was placed on our ship. So we were the command ship, and we were, well, commanding a group of ships for the entire deployment. And that was a really interesting experience because it was international staff. So I had colleagues from Denmark, from Germany, Belgium, Poland, well, all over really, with some Dutch folk also. And me and my colleague Jacco, we were both dual-headed, so head of department on the ship and also working for the international staff. It was a very intensive period, I must say. We made very long days, but also very fun. And yeah, because I knew I had to be also staff logistics officer, I had to go for training to the Maritime Command in North London to train in a certain program. And as it was in London, I also had time on my way back to meet up with lovely Marianne again. I was able to stay at their house for a night and visit another yarn store. And I went to Loop London because I hadn't been there yet. And I bought some yarn there. This little pink skein, which I thought I would turn into a hat by Knit by Numbers. It's a DK yarn in pure Falkland wool, and the color is, I don't know, it doesn't say on here, but it's a lovely pink, and someday this will turn into a hat. And I bought some yarn by the Border Mill, North Coast Tweed, which I have in this is a little bit I have left. And I bought this in the pink heathered and in this blue, and I held it together with Isayer Mohair, and this turned into a mohair, the Oslo Hat Mohair edition. And this has become my favorite winter hat. I wore it all over the deployment every single weekend, every harbor we went to. And I can't remember, I lost the ball band of the blue one, but I had two 25 gram balls, I think. And they were, is it 25? No, 50 grams. But it was not enough to make a hat. So I decided halfway that I wanted to make it dual colored, so I would have enough. And the pom-pom I bought at the Yarn Cake in Oslo, which I thought was a nice addition to my hat. And it's attached with a magnet, so I can take it off when it's really windy or I want a different look, or I pop it back on. And this is my favorite winter hat. And I also bought a tote bag at Loop London, and since I have already too many tote bags, I made it into a project bag, which I will show you in a minute. And this has become my Loop London project bag. It's very simple, and I thought was a nice way and it's a very simple inside, but I like to take it, and it has been with me on my travel to New York. Yeah, nice way to transform your tote bags into something you really use, actually. And then came deployment. I'm sorry. Our first port of call for the deployment with the group of ships was Lisbon. And I was looking forward to visiting Lisbon in September because, first of all, it was sunny. Second of all, because of the food and because the city is just beautiful. And because I desperately wanted to visit the Retrosaria Rosa Pomar store. And that's what I did. And I got, you won't guess, a project bag. And in there I got enough yarn of the Vovo in a blue blackish color. It's the color 03. And this time I bought a kit. So I bought the bag, the yarn, and the pattern, and it's for the Marinera sweater. It's a lovely cabled sweater, and this is the original yarn color. So this is waiting for me to finish my caramel sweater from London, so I can start the Marinera sweater from Lisbon. And as one of my colleagues had his 50th birthday, and I was initially planning on making him a hat, I also found this skein in a section where they have discounted yarn, and it's the Bairoa in the color 567, and it's 100% wool, and it's a bit of, well, rustic yarn. I wanted to make this into a hat but decided otherwise, so this one is still left. Maybe it would be nice to make something for my mother-in-law, since the colors are more or less matching. So I have to think about that. Maybe this could be a Sophie scarf or something. so it's not too itchy for her. Yeah, and I also, if you go to the site of Rosa Pomar, you see that they sell handmade Portuguese leather shoes. I couldn't resist, so I bought myself some leather boots, which I really, really, really love, but I won't show you on here because I don't want my dirty boots on the table. And then, back to the story of my Cumulus tea. I started it in vacation in Brittany, and my plan was to be able to wear it once we were in Lisbon. But knitting on 3mm needles really, really, really takes a long time. So it wasn't finished by the first time we went to Lisbon. But since Lisbon was also our second port of call, we had a big exercise near Lisbon, and then we went back to Lisbon to do a resupply and have another port visit. So for the second port visit, I was actually able to wear my own Cumulus tea, and I did, and I really loved it. So I'll put in some pictures here of our lovely time in Lisbon. And the thing I cast on afterwards was a hat in West Yorkshire Spinners Retreat in a dark blue color, because it was one of my colleagues' birthday coming up, and really for people, especially men, especially my colleagues, I was hiding in plain sight. So I was knitting wherever we went, and we spent the entire weekend together. I was knitting on a blue hat, which I gifted to my colleague Jaco, and I guess he didn't even register that I was making a blue hat until he got it for his birthday. And I also wore it on the day, and well, if it's not too windy, because I made it on big needles, and if it's really windy, it blows through, but he really liked it as far as I know. So after Lisbon, we went up north to participate in a large exercise called Joint Warrior. It's a big NATO exercise, which takes place on the western side, on the Hebrides Islands, for us at least. It's all over UK. It's a big NATO exercise, so very important to take part. And we also did launching some missiles there, Missile X, or missile launching exercise. And at the beginning of the exercise, or before beginning the exercise, we had some planning meetings in Glasgow, and I had the opportunity to visit the Yarn Cake, a little store by the lovely Antje. And as the name says, it's yarn and cake. She had a lovely little nook where you could sit, have a coffee, have some cake. And since the weather was all very Scottish that day, I spent most of my afternoon sitting there chatting to her, and we found out that she is originally from Germany and has been living in Scotland for the longest time. And so we were chatting in German and all about knitting and yarn and how it is to live in another country, since I lived in Germany for so long. And I just had the loveliest time. And as I said, I bought my pom-pom there for my hat. I bought some West Yorkshire Spinners Color Lab. This actually is a yarn for my daughter, because she just by then learned how to knit. This is the color Purple Rain. And I bought the Signature Sparkle sock yarn, which will definitely turn into socks before this Christmas. I think this will be a nice on-the-side project, because I want glittery socks under the Christmas tree. And I bought this yarn, which I caked up but haven't used yet. It's Iona yarns, and it's 100% single origin from, well, Iona. And it's made, it was a special yarn that she had, let me see. And it's made on the Isle of Iona in Argyll, and it's green teal. And the idea with this yarn, it's quite rustic, is to make a headband, because I thought this would be a nice little project. I think I will be making a cabled one. And so yeah, I think I even wound this up at sea using a wooden pin. So this is waiting for me to make a headband, and it's Aran weight. Yeah. And I keep my cakes in these little socks, so they keep nice and won't unravel. And maybe, since I've gotten quite some questions, I will even consider putting some up in an Etsy shop, but I haven't had the courage yet. So first the podcast and then maybe later the Etsy shop. And what I also got was, of course, a project bag to remind me of my lovely time with Antje in the yarn cake. And I got a little tin I keep my knitting notions in from Emma Ball. And a few doors down the road from Antje, there was this little gift shop, and I bought this little bag of Harris tweed. If you see my previous episode, you know that I bought the big Harris tweed project bag, handbag from the VYEN company. And the funny thing is, while I was in Glasgow chatting with Antje, I was chatting on Instagram or messaging on Instagram with Ross by the VYEN company, because he had just launched Harris tweed knitting bags and notion bags and stuff. So it was kind of lovely, because he is originally from Glasgow, to be chatting in the three-way round, me being in Glasgow, him living in my native town of Nijmegen. It was quite funny. Yeah, after Glasgow, we had a brief logistics stop in Den Helder. Imagine it like a Formula One pit stop. We literally came in, it was a Sunday, we had everybody ashore, shore support, and we had to take in some new missiles, get rid of the old canisters, because we had launched some in the exercise. We had to take on fuel, food and everything, and I had to organize the whole thing. And as a special treat for the crew, we managed to get a food truck, which turned out 300 pizzas in 2 hours. So my galley crew could focus on taking on refreshments and loading up the food. And after visiting Den Helder for these brief 6 hours, we continued our travel to the Baltic. And there first up was Riga. I had never been there before, so this was a whole new experience. It's a lovely town, really worth it to go there on a city trip. We did something quite fun with the officers community. We did like a rally through Riga, sitting in old Fiat cars. So there's this company who organizes it, and we were with 7 or 8 teams, everybody in an old Fiat in the most crazy colors, and you had to drive around certain spots and do certain challenges, make photos, and in the end, I think we were second of all the teams. We had a blast. So if you ever go to Riga, look it up and do this Fiat rally. It was really, really fun. Yeah, and of course I bought some yarn. And I bought myself this little box, and it's from Knit Like a Latvian and by Hobby Wool. Yeah, it's a lovely little store. I think the husband of the owner was in that day, and I bought this little package. I'll show you with everything in here. So it's wool. It has a card, Knit Like a Latvian. She also brought out a book with Knit Like a Latvian for gloves. And this is my knitting pattern for the Latvian gloves, together with the description how to make it. I guess with my to knit list, these have to wait until next year somehow, but well, I had it. And then I was browsing around a little more, and I found this skein of lamb's wool. And I don't know if you can see it, but it's really dark blue with all kinds of speckles in there, some copper color, greenish. And this is, I think it was 100% lamb's wool, 190 grams. And I also got a contrasting color, and the idea was maybe to make home socks with it, but since this is lamb's wool, this won't be very durable. Still have to see, maybe this would also be a nice scarf. I think I have to up my scarf knitting. But I didn't want to leave without some extra skeins, since they were also very affordable there. I think the skein was about 11 euros and this 2 or 3 euros. I could have bought the entire store, honestly, And so that was Riga. Well, after Riga we still continued, but I think I will save it for the next episode because my entire table is covered in yarn already and I have to look up all the other yarny goodies I bought in the harvest which came after, and I will save that for episode 5. In the meanwhile, thank you so much for sticking around. If you want to know anything about me, the Navy, or any other suggestion or question or comment, I'm glad to hear it. I would massively like if you would subscribe my channel and recommend it to others. And yeah, I wish you a lovely day, have a nice weekend, and hopefully see you next time. Bye!